Guys, here is something that almost nobody tells you. Two people can eat the exact same meal, sit down at the exact same table, and end up with completely different blood sugar patterns an hour later. Same food, same portions, same body type. Yet one of them walks away with a smooth, calm glucose curve, and the other spikes hard and crashes even harder. The difference has nothing to do with willpower, metabolism, or genetics. It comes down to one tiny decision made in the 10 minutes right after the guy's last bite. And once you understand what is actually happening inside your body during that window, you will never look at a post-meal couch session the same way again. Most people have been told their blood sugar is shaped by what they eat. And yes, food matters. But that is only half the story. The other half happens after the fork goes down. What you do with your body in the minutes following a meal has a measurable, scientifically documented effect on how high your glucose rises, how long it stays elevated, and how your body handles that fuel over the next several hours. This is not a fringe theory or a wellness trend. Research on post-meal movement, diabetes management guidelines, and exercise physiology all point to the same conclusion. The moments right after eating are one of the most underused levers you have for blood sugar control, and most people are completely ignoring them. So here is the experiment. 10 minutes of walking after every meal every day for 14 days. No gym. No fancy equipment. No extreme diet overhaul. Just a short, easy walk timed specifically around meals. And the goal is not to burn calories or work off the pasta. That is not how this works at all. What you are actually doing is something far more interesting at the cellular level. And understanding it will change how you think about exercise, about blood sugar, and about your body's intelligence. Because your muscles are not passive passengers in the glucose story. They are active players, and walking wakes them up at exactly the right moment. When you eat a meal, your digestive system immediately begins breaking down carbohydrates into glucose. That glucose flows into your bloodstream, and your pancreas responds by releasing insulin. Insulin's job is to shuttle that glucose out of the blood and into your cells, where it can be used for energy. If you are sitting still after that meal, the entire job of clearing glucose from your blood falls almost entirely on insulin. The muscles are the tissues that make up the body's structure. Eyes are just sitting there, doing very little, contributing almost nothing to the process. That is when you get the steep post-meal spike, the heavy foggy feeling an hour later, and the crash that sends you hunting for something sweet mid-afternoon. But when you start walking right after eating, something completely different happens. Your leg muscles begin contracting, and those contractions trigger a process that pulls glucose out of your bloodstream directly through a pathway that works independently of insulin. You read that right. Your muscles can take up glucose without waiting for insulin to unlock the door. This matters enormously because it means that even people with impaired insulin function can still get meaningful glucose clearance just by moving their legs. The muscles become their own glucose disposal system, activated simply by the act of walking, and they start working within minutes of the first step. A systematic review published in Sports Medicine confirmed that exercise has a greater acute effect on post-meal glucose when it is performed as soon as possible after eating. Not an hour later. Not before the meal. Immediately after. And a randomized crossover trial in adults with type 2 diabetes found that 3 10-minute walks after each main meal lowered post-meal glucose more effectively over 2 weeks than a single 30-minute walk done once a day. Let that sink in. 30 minutes of continuous walking done at one time was outperformed by just 30 total minutes spread across 3 short bursts timed around meals. The difference was not volume. It was timing. And timing in this case is everything. Think about what a glucose spike actually looks like on a graph. Right after eating, glucose rises. It peaks somewhere between 30 and 90 minutes depending on the meal, and then ideally it comes back down smoothly. The sharper and higher that peak, the harder your body has to work to bring it back down. And if those spikes happen repeatedly, meal after meal, day after day, they slowly wear down the system. The pancreas works overtime. Insulin resistance can creep in over time. Energy becomes erratic. Fatigue becomes the default. But if you can soften that peak, Flatten the curve just a little bit, the whole system operates under less stress. That is what a 10-minute walk is actually doing. It is not dramatic, but it is precise, and it works. Here is where a lot of people set themselves up for disappointment. They start the 14-day walk test, they check their fasting glucose every morning. And when the number barely moves in the first few days, they assume nothing is working. But fasting glucose is a stubborn, complex number. It does not just reflect what happened at dinner last night. It reflects your liver's overnight glucose output, the hormone surge that naturally happens before you wake up, your baseline insulin sensitivity, sleep quality, stress levels, and the cumulative effect of days' habits. It is not a simple report card for yesterday. It is a summary of many overlapping systems, and it takes time to shift. Expecting a dramatic drop in fasting glucose after 3 days of walking is a little like expecting your credit score to change the day after you pay a bill. The system is listening, but it updates on its own schedule. What does change faster is what happens after your meals, and that is actually the more important change. Post-meal glucose spikes are often the first place blood sugar problems begin. They are also the first place that improvement shows up when you start doing the right things. So in the early days of this experiment, the person paying close attention will notice subtler changes first. Less heaviness after lunch, more stable energy through the afternoon. Fewer cravings around 3 in the afternoon when the post-lunch crash would normally hit. Less brain fog after dinner. These are not dramatic. They are quiet, but they are real. The first signals that your glucose rhythm is starting to shift before your fasting number has caught up. The American Diabetes Association has documented that physical activity can lower blood glucose for up to 24 hours or more after exercise by improving the body's sensitivity to insulin. That means each 10-minute walk is not just cleaning up glucose from the meal you just ate. It is also making your body more receptive to insulin for hours afterward. So the walk you take after lunch is still helping you during dinner. The walk after dinner is still influencing what happens the next morning. These effects stack. They build on each other. 14 days of consistent post-meal walking is not just 14 isolated events. It is a cumulative signal being sent to your metabolism, and your body does respond to repeated signals. Now, a word about what this experiment is not. It is not a substitute for real lifestyle change if you need it. It is not a magic eraser for a diet built entirely on processed food and refined sugar. A 10-minute walk after a large meal loaded with fast-digesting carbohydrates will help, but it cannot fully offset a glucose challenge that is too large for the movement to absorb. If you eat something balanced, something that includes protein, fiber, and healthy fat alongside the carbohydrates, that 10-minute walk pairs with it much more powerfully. The food sets up the glucose load. The walk helps your muscles manage it. Together they work as a team. Separately, each one is doing only part of the job. There are also some common mistakes that quietly sabotage this habit. The first is waiting too long. If you finish dinner and then sit on the couch for 45 minutes before going for a walk, you have already missed the window where the glucose peak is forming. You are walking into a post-meal period that has already done most of its damage. Walking late is still beneficial for insulin sensitivity, but you lose the specific advantage of catching the glucose curve on the way up. The second mistake is treating the walk like a punishment. People say, "I ate too much, I need to walk it off," and they turn it into a guilt exercise. That mindset does not stick. The better frame is, I am giving my muscles a signal right after eating, and that signal helps my whole body operate more smoothly for the rest of the day. By around the midpoint of 14 days, the pattern becomes clearer. People report feeling steadier in the afternoons. The mid-morning and mid-afternoon slumps that used to feel inevitable start to shrink. Sleep can feel more stable, not because the walk is a sleep intervention, but because more consistent blood sugar throughout the day tends to reduce the metabolic noise that disrupts rest. Cravings can ease, not because willpower suddenly improved, but because when blood glucose is not spiking and crashing repeatedly, the body's hunger signals become more rational and less urgent. You are not fighting yourself. Eyes as hard. And that has a quieter quality of life effect that does not show up in any single lab number, but is deeply felt in daily experience. When the 14 days end, Here is how to actually evaluate what happened. Do not look only at your fasting glucose reading and decide from that single number whether this experiment worked. Look at the pattern. Is the morning number slightly lower, or at least more consistent and less erratic from day to day? Do you feel steadier after meals in a way that is noticeably different from 2 weeks ago? Are your afternoons more productive, your cravings more manageable, your energy more predictable? Those are the real measures. Fasting glucose has high within-person variability. A single number on a single morning can be thrown off by a stressful dream, a poor night of sleep, or the natural hormone surge before waking. The trend over several days tells the truth. A single morning reading is just a snapshot. What this 14-day test is really proving is something much bigger than a number on a glucose meter. It is proving that your body responds to small, well-timed actions. It is proving that you do not need an hour at the gym to move the needle on metabolic health. You need the right action at the right time, repeated consistently enough for the body to recognize it as a signal worth responding to. And a 10-minute walk right after a meal, done 3 times a day, is exactly that kind of signal. It is simple enough to do every single day. It requires no equipment, no schedule disruption, no calorie counting. It is available to almost everyone. And yet it works through a mechanism that even exercise scientists find elegant, because it activates your muscles at the exact moment your bloodstream needs them most. Here is what the research says about the long game. The habits that improve metabolic health are not the most dramatic ones. They are the most consistent ones. A person who walks for 10 minutes after every meal, every day, for a year will almost certainly have better blood sugar control, better insulin sensitivity, and likely better fasting glucose than a person who occasionally does a 60-minute workout but spends the rest of the time sitting after meals. Consistency beats intensity when the goal is metabolic health. The 10-minute walk is sustainable in a way that aggressive programs are not. You can do it in work clothes. You can do it with your dog, your child, or your partner. You can do it in your living room if it is raining. It scales to real life, and that is the whole point. So here is what to do with this. Start today. Pick one meal, just one, and commit to a 10-minute walk immediately after. Tomorrow, add a second meal. By day 3, you are doing it after all 3. Do not overthink the pace. A casual stroll counts. A gentle walk around the block counts. You are not training for a race. You are opening a door for glucose to exit your bloodstream through a route that is efficient, natural, and available to you at every single meal. Your muscles have been waiting for this. They are built for it, and every time you give them that 10-minute window to do their job, your entire metabolic system runs a little smoother, a little calmer, and a little more the way it was designed to run. If this changed the way you think about blood sugar and movement, drop a comment below and tell me which meal would be hardest for you to walk after. Lunch at your desk? Dinner on the couch? That answer tells you exactly where to start. And if you know someone who keeps wondering why their morning glucose still feels stuck despite eating better, share this with them. Because the missing piece might not be on the plate at all. It might be the 10 minutes right after the last bite. Like and subscribe so you do not miss what comes next, and remember, this content is for educational purposes only. If you use insulin or glucose-lowering medication, especially anything that can cause low blood sugar, please monitor your response carefully and speak with your healthcare professional before making this a daily routine.